All right, let's talk about how to take better photographs. The assignment that's coming up is going to be a photography assignment. And in order to do well on this assignment, you're going to need to know how to take really good photographs. So I'm going to talk a little bit about photography, talk about some tips. I'm going to give you some links to some other videos as well as to some websites to give you more examples and for you to do a little bit more research on your own before you try this assignment. All right, so first of all, did you know that photography can be considered a fine art? So by fine art, I mean drawing, painting, sculpture. Those are the fine arts. Photography can also be a fine art, and I went to school to become a photographer. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in photography. A lot of people go to college and they get a Bachelor of Science or a Bachelor of Arts, but mine was the Bachelor of Fine Arts, which means I went to an art school. And because I got to study photography, that allowed me to learn how to use photography as art as opposed to just, beyond just snapshots and photojournalism. I did start off learning about photojournalism and realized that's not what I wanted to do. I didn't really like the writing part of it. I just liked the photography part. And then that's when I got into the fine art program. And I've worked for 2 university newspapers. I've had photographs featured on the cover of some of those newspapers. And that kind of led me to have a dream job of working for Sports Illustrated, being a photographer for Sports Illustrated, not writing articles. So in art school, whenever I declared my major as photography, I had to go through multiple what's called portfolio reviews, and that's where I take my work and present it to a panel of teachers, professors, and then they decide if I get to score high enough to move on in the program. You only get 2 chances to be accepted into the next level of the program, and if you don't get accepted after your second try, then you have to change your major to something else. And I did have a friend who did not make it. She tried twice and they did not accept her photos either time, and so she had to change her degree into something else, which is really sad, but art programs are extremely competitive. And so I was very fortunate and very lucky to get to finish my photography degree. So my senior show, in order to graduate from art school, you have to participate in what's called a senior show, where you come up with a theme and your artwork is all about this theme. And my theme was called husband hunting. To me, it was commentary basically on how women feel like when they go to college, they have to get married, like they're there to look for their husband before they graduate. And that's kind of how it was in the 50s and the 60s. Women went to college, but most of them were going to look for their husband. And so it was kind of a humorous and ridiculous commentary on that theme, that women have to get married. So anyway, I have a link below for you to see some of those examples if you want to see it. I only put 2 pictures in there from the husband hunting series, but one of my biggest accomplishments as a photographer, as an artist photographer, was getting what's called a solo show. A solo show is like the epitome of art. This is what you strive for. You strive to get your own show at a gallery of your work. And that happened to me right out of college. And so I kind of checked that goal box super fast, which led me to becoming a teacher. And I did end up getting married. I did end up marrying my college sweetheart. We dated for 6 years. And that led me into teaching, which I wouldn't change for the world. I don't want to be a sports photographer anymore. I get to take pictures of my kids doing sports, and that's good enough for me. I love teaching, and I've found out this is where I'm supposed to be. So, pretty soon after college, Hurricane Katrina had hit, and I was fortunate enough that my in-laws were from New Orleans, and we go to New Orleans every year for Christmas to see my husband's family's the rest of his cousins, aunts, uncles. And I was fortunate enough to be given a tour, like kind of like a private tour of the lower ninth ward that had gotten flooded so badly and so damaged. And I was able to take some really incredible pictures. And so from those photographs, I got selected to have my own art show, my own photography show at the University of North Texas at their art gallery. And because of that, I had met my goal. Like, that was my goal as an artist, was to have my own show, and I got to do that super fast. And so I was ready to move on after that. I didn't feel like I needed to keep having these solo shows. I mean, just to have one is incredible, and I got to do that really fast. So I found teaching right away pretty soon after that. And so I've been teaching for 14 years now. And let's get into some photography tips. So lighting is really important. This is me without any light on. So it's really good to have nice soft lighting. Of course, I'm using a ring light. And so it makes the lighting more even, soft, makes my face brighter so that the background isn't darker, right? So I'm darker than the background, and the background stands out more than me. With the light focused more on my face, that makes me brighter and makes me stand out more. How you can get this soft lighting without a ring light is from a window. And that's a window without the sun directly shining in it. So that's it's like what we call ambient light. So the sun is somewhere else in a different window, on a different side of the house. You're choosing a window in which the sun is not directly shining through. When you look out the window, you can't see the sun. Okay, so that's the kind of window you would want. And you would want to pull the blinds up. If there's any kind of curtains or blinds, you would want to move them fully out of the way so that you're not getting any shadows from the mini blinds or curtains or whatever you've got going on. Also, you want to make sure you don't have light from above. So right now, my ring light is kind of above me because I don't have a way to put the phone inside the middle of the light. So the phone is a little bit below. So you can see the lower I get, the more shadows I get on my face. See how it becomes really dark right here under my eyes because the light is now way above me. But whenever I get higher, the shadows go away, okay? So overhead lighting is really bad. So you don't want to use your living room ceiling fan light because that is from overhead. You would want to use that window because you're able to get it closer to your face, and from the side, that light, you really want side lighting, not overhead lighting. Overhead lighting is bad. Also, never use the flash. This is to make more artistic photos. If you're taking pictures of your family, you just want some snapshots, do whatever you want. But for a photography assignment, we want to use good practices of photography, and that is not using the flash. So you need to make sure that you take your photograph of your subject. So the subject is the person, animal, the thing, whatever it is you're taking a picture of, that's your subject. And you want to make sure the subject is in a well-lit space. If you're going to go outside, please make sure it is not noon, because at noon, the sun is overhead. Remember, overhead lighting is bad. You could always find the shade of a tree, but you want to make sure the shade is solid and not broken up with little speckles, because those little speckles will show up on your subject. There's so many things with lighting. Lighting is so important. But those are the main things about lighting, okay? So no harsh shadows, no overhead lighting, and don't use the flash. Rule of thirds, this is your next step. So once you kind of master lighting, then you want to move on to rule of thirds. This has to do with composition. So in art, we have a composition. Composition is the way that we arrange the objects inside the photo frame. And rule of thirds is when we break the screen into thirds horizontally and thirds vertically. Okay, and these little points, the little crosshairs that get created, those are the important parts of the frame. That's where we want to put our object. So yes, right now I'm kind of dead center. It's not very exciting, but if I move over a little bit, or if I move over this way a little bit, then I've got a little bit more interesting composition of my frame. Okay, and so that's what this is for. So if you have a grid option on your camera setting, turn it on. That's going to help you frame your objects, frame your subject a little bit better, because then you can place your subject in those important crosshairs as opposed to just dead center. Stay out of the dead center. That's boring. Now, there's times when symmetry is cool and you do want things centered and when it's purposeful. But when there's no purpose because whatever's happening behind you isn't beautiful and symmetrical and you're trying to frame that, then you don't really want to see that. Okay, we want to hide that. Okay. Let's see. My next tip, growth. So what I mean by growth is when you have things growing from out of your head. So I'm going to use the example of my little flag up here. So like my poster and my flag are like sitting on the edge of my head. So it makes it look like they're coming out of my head. People do this so often. So if you can learn to pay attention to what's happening behind your subject, then you can help your subject move to a more flattering background, which would be something more simple. And not with crazy twigs and branches and things growing out of the head, okay? So growth. We don't want to have any growth coming out of our subject. Getting closer is my next tip. Get closer. So instead of using the zoom feature, and this is another tip, don't use the zoom feature on your photo, where you do like this and it zooms in. That actually makes your camera more pixelated. If you just walk your feet closer to your subject, then you're going to still get a really big file, and that bigger file is going to allow you to do more edits and manipulate it in order to have a really good photograph. Also, if you're taking a selfie, I know you want to use the front camera, but the front camera is not very good. You want to use the back camera, where all the little cameras are, or if you have a newer phone, there's like multiple cameras. That's the camera you want to use, and you actually want to hold your hand on the other side, and even though you can't see it, it takes better photos. It usually makes the better lighting, and then the file is a better file because those cameras are more clear than the front-facing camera. So if you're going to do selfies, practice doing it from the other side, from the back camera instead of the front camera. You'll get better results. And then you just take a lot until you get one where you're framed correctly. All right, different angles. So whenever we photograph from different angles, so instead of just putting your subject straight in the middle, straight on, try getting from above, try going from below, try moving around your subject so that you can get a more dynamic shot versus just straight on, right? Because if you move around your subject, you might get a more interesting direction, okay? And you can also have your subject move, just like how I was doing. Movement is really good because you never know which one's going to be the best, right? So have your subject kind of moving and tilting, kind of like posing if you're taking a picture of someone else. But also if you're taking a picture of yourself, don't just stand straight on, right? Try different directions, practice in a mirror, see what looks best on you. All right, if you're going to take pictures of animals or food, please get down low. So instead of taking your picture from way above, from very far away, instead get closer and get lower. So I'm just going to use this roll of tape for an example. So instead of taking a picture of this roll of tape from way far away, right? Instead, you can get on level, get your camera level. And now the tape looks more interesting, right? Because it's closer and we're on level with the camera as opposed to way far away and from below, right? Not very exciting. Okay, so now the tape looks exciting because I've got it closer. I've also got it on that 1/3 mark, and I've got good lighting on it. So I've got all those things happening to make the tape look more interesting. All right, and always take lots of pictures. Photography is never a one and done kind of thing. I will take hundreds of pictures, probably not hundreds, of the same thing, but if I was taking pictures of this tape, I would probably take 10 or 15 pictures and maybe get one that's really good, that's got everything in it that I'm looking for. So always take a lot of pictures, right? This is digital. Back in my day, whenever I was learning photography and I had to use film, it was different. You couldn't take hundreds of pictures. You had to be very careful and selective and more thoughtful. But now, because it's digital, you can take tons of pictures and then you delete the ones that aren't any good and you save the ones that are good. So don't be scared to take lots and lots of pictures.